You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. Welcome to the Centresteer Podcast, the only Land Rover podcast on the planet. This is show number 48 for March 2017. This is a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners. Visit our website, centresteer.com, to listen to previous shows and for show notes, which have links to stories discussed in today's show. We're part of the 4x4 Radio Network, and I invite you to check out the other 4x4 related shows at 4x4radionetwork.com. Thanks for your comments, follows, likes on Facebook, Twitter, and emails. Special thanks to our Patreon subscribers. Visit patreon.com/Centresteer for all the details and to make a monthly contribution so that we can do some interesting, cool things like go to SCAR. I'm going to be attending the SCAR rally in Texas, April 19th through the 23rd. Not April 12th, like I put on my notes, and hope to do some podcasting recording right there on site. Track me down. I'll give you a sticker. Hopefully I don't run out. I am your host, John Costage, here in wonderful Western Pennsylvania. Spring has sprung, and it is about almost 70 degrees today. I actually did take out my series truck today to go up to do my daily constitutional walk, which I've started. So it was exciting. And also joining me...
You drive a truck to take a walk.
Doesn't everybody?
Seems counterintuitive to me.
Well, I have to get up to the other hill that is the local high school campus, which is a nice place to do walking. And so it's a good opportunity to take the series truck out.
And, you know, it's a series truck, so it's a bit of a workout.
That's true. It is a workout in and of itself. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's true. At least you get some arm exercise that way.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And also joining me via Skype this month is Harold, who's just down the road. And Harold is still doing important work for important people.
Well, I'm at least working for you.
I get no respect. No respect.
That costs extra.
And also from the Green Mountain State.
Hey, how's it going?
And you're your new digs, right?
I am, yeah.
Which look like the old digs.
Surprisingly, they do, yes.
I don't know if everybody's aware you had some problems with your apartment and had to change apartments. So thank you for joining us today, Morgan, from your new abode.
Yes.
Is this a permanent new abode?
Yeah, at least for the next year or so.
Okay. I mean, so you actually got out of the old apartment and went to the new apartment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed. I had a nice big parking lot at my previous place, so it's perfect for working. Well, not perfect for working on the Land Rover, but at least there was plenty of space. I would prefer to work inside, but do what you have to do. Now I have on-street parking only.
Ooh.
So,
ouch.
Yeah, slim pickings. You do what you got to do.
Did you move far from the last place?
10 miles, so not very far.
All right. Our guest this month is Mike Ragsdale. He is of the 30A company, and they put on the 30A Sand Rover Rally. And Mike will join us later in the show to talk about the Sand Rover Rally, which is coming up in just a few weeks. If you're going, tell Mike you heard about it on the show or something. Does that sound good? We'd like to hear about it, because it certainly sounds really an interesting part of the world, a part of the United States, which I didn't realize was as beautiful as the pictures show.
Well, certainly this time of year. I imagine in the depths of summer, it's not quite so nice up there.
Unless you're a certain individual from an island off the coast of northern America, maybe Maine, maybe.
I don't know. Hot and sticky is still hot and sticky no matter where you're from.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the news for this month. First up is JLR sales for February. And to boil it down for you, JLR sales were up and Land Rover sales were down, but Land Rover was coming off of a great 2016. So I'm not really a problem, I think, for Land Rover.
It's kind of a flip-flop of what they've been doing for the past year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the F-Pace is doing very, very well, which is helping.
Yeah, sad to hear that.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I mean, I get that, it's a business. You got to do things for the business, but still, they have no business making trucks.
That's sales for the month. So moving on, there were some interviews with Ralph Spaeth, who's the CEO of JLR, and they asked him some questions regarding Brexit and the import tax possibly happening into the United States. And his basic line was, "We're not getting involved. We just need to design and build better vehicles." So seems like that's their official company line is. Building better vehicles will save their customers. What's the number I saw here? 21% in the United States. That's the potential price increase for a Land Rover or a Jaguar vehicle. Might go up 21% if that import tax goes into play.
Oh, like we were saying last month, they've got to have a lot of extra bang for your buck. It's got to be a lot better vehicle.
I don't know what they can do at all, because they're trying to make this push to be even more luxurious than they've been recognized as being before. I don't know. And their vehicles are already, I think quite highly priced. To tack on another 20% is...
I would say that this is going to kill the entry-level Land Rover, but there is no such thing anymore.
Well, weren't they trying to position the Evoque and the Disco Sport as the new entry levels?
Well, I mean, nothing's truly entry-level anymore, but yeah, I think it's the stuff at the lower end of their offering spectrum is probably going to get trimmed for the North American market if they really do enact that steep of a tax.
Right.
But I think in reality, you're not likely to see it be that high. I think somewhere in the back room and smoke-filled dealings that happen in government, there's going to be some compromise somewhere.
Very possible. I think no matter what happens, they've got to be really concerned about the new Defender, which I know we've mentioned before. But I think this would seriously impact bringing the Defender here to the U.S.
Well, they're hurting for production capacity. Maybe they should consider building them here.
Possibility. Well, they already considered that a couple of years ago and end up building a plant in Brazil, I believe.
Well, maybe they should think about a plant closer to us. I'd give them a hand if they needed it.
You would.
I would too.
You would work. You both would work for them in the factory.
For a little while, sure. Help them get started. Why not?
All right, folks. You heard it there first.
If you come, I will build it.
Harold wants to be the first employee in the JLR's North America plant.
I would gladly spin the first spanner.
To your point, Harold, because you already knew what stories we're going to talk about, this Spaeth also said the Defender will always be designed and engineered in the UK, but, quote, we do not have the space, unquote, to build at the company's current British plants. So where will they build it? And there's been discussion we've heard in the past that maybe it might be in Czech, maybe Brazil, or maybe both places, I suspect. They have a China plant now. I wonder if maybe the Defender for China would be built in China and the rest of the world might be Czech.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed.
Still, it's too bad to hear that they're probably not going to build it in the UK.
Well, but that potentially could help with a lower price too, because they probably would produce it in a place where their costs are cheaper.
That is true, and especially since, in their family lineup, Defender is supposed to be the lowest, most affordable, most utilitarian vehicle. It has to fit into that slot somehow.
And if it's the most third world friendly, why not build it in the third world?
I don't think that's the case anymore, though, Harold. I think the things we've heard is that that's what Spaeth also said in one of those interviews, was that the Defender needs to be a modern vehicle, safe, environmentally friendly, all the things that people expect, creature comforts that people expect.
I'm speaking spiritually and historically, but yeah, I get your point.
Fair enough.
And I would be interested to hear what the British military is considering for vehicles at this point, whether they would ever want another Defender or not, or whether that's even an option.
It's a good question. I've not seen any discussion of that in any of the news articles.
And obviously, it's no longer an actually British-owned company at this point, so they probably have less care for it.
No, I disagree. I think there's still that link to the Defender and to the brand. I think there's still that connection.
It is still a favorite of the Queen's, after all.
True.
Very true.
It does have the royal warrant still. It actually has 2 royal warrants. It has the Queen and Prince of Wales. That's, what's his name?
Chuck,
the heir to the throne. That's us Americans. I don't know, some guy. All good questions. Hopefully, in time, we will find the answers, and we will continue to watch it for you from podcast headquarters. Moving on in the news, JLR selects InnerWorkings. I think it's a Chicago company for its global marketing execution. I think we talked last month, if I'm not mistaken, about them looking for a new marketer. I think this is the marketer because it calls it marketing execution. I assume that's the marketer. It's a multi-year agreement. They will assume responsibility for the production, procurement, and distribution of highly visible branded materials for JLR. It's worldwide supply chain, blah, blah, blah. They'll deliver lower costs for JLR while maximizing quality and speed to market, etc. There's marketing. So.
Does that mean we lose the fabulous Above and Beyond campaign?
This remains to be seen. Good question. That's not mentioned here. Not mentioned here. That is a good question. Will that change all the marketing style, or are they going to continue the same marketing, but someone else is going to be doing the execution? I don't know.
Because it's kind of ambiguous with the terminology. I mean, it's like, are they actually going to determine the marketing, or if it's execution, that just means it's a fancy word for a print shop?
Well, it's really hard to say because they say production, but in the print world or the marketing world, production can mean just the actual, producing the art for the marketing campaign. So they may be the ones in Photoshop and Illustrator all day, but Land Rover is still coming up with the general marketing plan.
Anyways, that's what we know. Or maybe if a listener understands it, they could send us a message and explain it to us, because we don't. Next story, Harold's favorite Land Rover employee, Jerry McGovern, has vowed to put third-party styling houses and tuners out of business by creating better variants of the brand's models through the company's SVO division.
Where do I start? It's one thing to pick on Jerry's vision and his designs, and I don't really have a big problem with that stuff. They're not my thing. But what really gripes me about Jerry McGovern, if I can be brutally honest, of course, I mean, that's what I like to do, but my problem with Jerry is his arrogance. His attitude that Jerry's vision is the only one that anybody should like. So Jerry is going to produce these things, and it's going to put everyone else out of business because Jerry's way is the way, and everyone's going to see that, and everyone's going to like it, and they're going to think that there's nobody else that can do it like Jerry does.
He says here, quote, "It's easy to take a product that's already been created and put a little spoiler on it or whatever, but I'd like to see them design their own car. We see them taking our property and making a bit more profit," unquote.
Well, I see them as taking his product and making it better.
Yeah, or customizing it for the new owner of the vehicle,
which is my definition of making it better.
Now, granted,
making it suit the individual needs of the individual owner. The great thing about vintage Land Rovers is they're like snowflakes. There's no two that are alike because you can customize them and swap parts around and make it exactly what you need.
Absolutely. Now, granted, SVO, the Special Vehicle Operations, they do a lot of those customizations, but man, the price tag's got to be even higher than the current, aftermarket tuners.
So instead of them making a bit more profit, he wants Land Rover to make a lot more profit.
Yeah. Now,
that's how
to have a monopoly on the process.
Right. Now, I will say SVO has put out some pretty cool vehicles over the years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no argument there. But my problem is I don't think that they should be mandated to be the only ones.
Agreed. And I don't think that they legally could be.
I'm not saying Jerry's trying to outlaw the other guys. He just thinks he's got the stones to put everybody out of business.
Well, careful.
He does seem to think that.
You guys raise good points, but there is a movement in the U.S. To restrict the ability to work on electronics, which isn't exclusively vehicles, but it would extend to vehicles, saying that that's intellectual property of the car company and that only they can work on that car. And you saw, I think in the last couple of weeks, I didn't save this article because I didn't think it would come up here, but there was some folks I want to say they're in Europe, and did they not hack into, quote-unquote hack, into their John Deere tractors so that they could get them to run? Because John Deere's like, hey, they're ours. We can work on them.
That's common in the U.S., Canada, and probably Europe as well. That's a big battle that's been fought for a few years now. Right,
and the repair industry, it gets pretty involved. I get some of the trade journals and read about that stuff all the time.
Yeah. So I think it's also one of those situations where they think this is what they want, but there's no way that they could possibly take on all the workload that those companies sort of, handle for them.
Oh, you mean that the manufacturer?
Yeah, the manufacturers. I mean, honestly, whether it's Land Rover or John Deere or any of those companies, they think they want the workload because they want the money, but there's so much additional overhead and infrastructure required to actually do that. So it's very wishful thinking.
Yeah, I get it from a standpoint of trying to preserve the integrity of the product and to make sure that there aren't people out there doing things that they have no business doing. But I mean, there's legitimate repairers out there in the aftermarket that have the right to do this stuff, and it's an interesting discussion on both sides of the coin.
Agreed. The John Deere side is especially interesting, and it sort of lines up with some of the pending Land Rover projects, but they have fully automated harvesting now, where your harvester, your combine can basically run the field itself and fill up other tractors along the way, and it's just all completely automated and can be unattended. Now, you really don't want somebody going and messing with that software and causing it to just veer off a field and cut through a town or something like that. And obviously Land Rover now has some more automated driving things that they're testing. So you don't want that to be screwed up. But there's a lot where it's just dumb little things that need to be fixed or reset that anybody should be able to do.
We will continue to discuss and monitor this topic. Automated vehicles is certainly something we've always discussed and talked about because it's the future.
Yep.
All right, so JLR also has trademarked 29 new model names. Most of them are in the Jag area, but back in February 22nd, let's see here, I'll just read off some of them because I find them interesting. And if you guys have any comments on them, speak up as I say them. The future Jag new models could be P-Type, T-Type, XJS, which I don't think has been used since 96. The company also filed trademarks for CXE, CXF, CXJ, which this article from Car Advice assumes out of Australia could be presumed to be future concept cars. Also, they have DIXE, IXE, XEDI, and XCI, and they think this could be electric and diesel electric variants of the XE model, the Jag XE model. And Jag also registered Westminster, hinting at a possible variant of the top-of-the-line XJ.
Now, are they going back and re-trademarking any of the historic names, too, or is this just a new model thing that they're doing?
It appears to be just new model names.
Okay, interesting.
It's unclear. I don't know. I don't know in the auto world, if you trademark a name, do you how long, what's the retention period you have for it? If it's forever, or if it's in production, or it might be production plus 5 years or something. I'm not sure what the.
Well, I'm just wondering if they're going back in and going after trademarks on previous words that may or may not have been model names, but they want to protect in the future from misuse.
Well, the only one that seems that I remember from the old days is XJS. Is that that's
right? Well, I hear that, but I don't know. I can't come up with any off the top of my head. But on the Land Rover side of the world, I think didn't they just trademark Landy? For instance,
I didn't talk about that yet, but I can if you're ready for that.
Sure, why not? We're here.
That's what we do. Land Rover protected Freestyle, Landmark, Landy, Range Rover Classic, Sawtooth, and Stormer nameplates.
Yeah, I'm not surprised on Landy or Land Rover Classic, because Land Rover Classic, that's just one that they've had for a while. Or Range Rover Classic, yeah, sorry. And they they had just out of SVO, rolled out the first remanufactured Range Rover Classic.
Right. Well,
so they probably counting that as now reproducing those vehicles. And then for Landy, that's another one of the ones that they've tended to do for preventing competition.
Much like they're doing in this country with businesses that might have the name Rover in their name, for instance.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things that especially in the UK companies have done is switched over to saying, "Oh, I'm Landy something or something Landy," and they want to get rid of that.
Yeah, don't forget this article's out of Australia, so it's possible this could be Australia only. And I didn't do any research to see if they did it elsewhere.
But if they're starting even if it's Australia only, it's only a matter of time before they expand their reach on that.
Try to, yeah, right.
Yeah, I would think.
Notably not included, Centresteer. So far I'm good. I did see that, and I was a little worried. Like, uh-oh, what are we going to do then? But hey, we have an established brand for the last 4 years, so I think.
And I think we could demonstrate that we're not for profit. At least in my wallet could tell you that.
Not anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we fundraise, but I don't think we're really working for profit.
Well, I did. I mean, I have incorporated. We have an LLC now, so
that's true. That's true. It gets a little murkier, but nonetheless, I think you get an exception for certain things. Like, for instance, our club has the name Land Rover in it, and we have a license from JLR to use that.
Centresteer podcast. It's Land Rover is not in the title, so I think that's my hope. We're clear of that.
Right, but if they tried to come after the name Centresteer and register it, we might have some room to get away with it.
All right, moving on. Britpart opens its first car parts depot for JLR in the Philippines. So for our non-U.S. listeners, you can get some parts now out of the Philippines.
They selling them out the back door or where they're making the parts?
Maybe get them a little cheaper, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
There are quite a few old Land Rovers running around down there, so, good to see more parts, or at least more accessible parts for them. Maybe
they'll allow the two of you to work in those plants and then in preparation for the North America plant.
I'm okay with waiting for the North America plant. I would love to go drive around some of the beaches in the Philippines and stuff.
Yeah, it'd be fun to go there and check it out. But yeah, I don't know that I want to work there, and I have plenty of things to do here anyway.
Yeah, like we said, hot and sticky is hot and sticky.
There you go.
So last podcast, the Range Rover, the new Range Rover Velar, was about to debut, and it has since we talked last. So we can talk about it now in more detail with concrete evidence. You can still get access to the video that has the reveal. It's about a half an hour long. You get to see fashion pictures of the Velar with Jerry standing in front of it. There's also a video that goes along with talking about some of the construction and some of the testing they did. They sprayed the vehicle in a refrigerator with water till the ice had an amount of ice on it. It was never clear to me how much ice, but it looked to be significant, maybe a quarter inch or so of ice on the surface. And then they activated the door locks because the handles are flush now with the vehicle until you push the button, in which case the handles pop out of the side of the vehicle, and that actually broke the ice. So they did some extreme weather testing there. So you can check out that video if you want to see more. But some of the articles that subsequent to that I wanted to bring up, we could talk about, was that the Velar may signal new strategy at Land Rover, and I mentioned this too last time, was why not just replace the Sport? And in this article, which is from Auto News, and looks like Nick Gibbs thought the same thing, but he was able to do other actual research because he's actually really a journalist, and said that coming up with another vehicle that may replace the Sport down the road but doesn't immediately could be a smart tactic, because luxury automakers Bentley and McLaren have discovered that expanding the lineup means you can launch new models more frequently and smooth out the sales and trough spikes that are part of the fickle luxury market. It doesn't matter so much what the model is, as long as it's new and desirable. On first look, that's certainly true of the Velar. So I think that might explain there was this white space that Jerry talked about that they need to fill. Is they just want a new name and a new something new out there, even if it looks like the other guys and it's slightly dissimilar, just because they want people to come by because people want new and they want new.
Well, it's publicity too. It gets them in the news.
Right. And, I will grant them that it takes a very long time to build a new vehicle.
At least the styling doesn't take very long, because all Jerry has to do is open up his computer and grab the corner of the box and stretch it one way or the other.
There's also another article from the Telegraph in the UK that shows the interior of the new Velar. Harold will be excited to hear this, too. Mr. McGovern has tried to keep physical switches to an absolute minimum. The effect is quite striking, representing a noticeable shift in the way car interiors are put together. So it's this, you've probably seen the pictures already. If not, you can check this article. They have a video of it, but there's a display screen in the middle, and there's a lot of flush, flat, no switches, minimal things to turn or activate.
Well, if it works, and if it lasts, switches are a common failure point in British vehicles, so the fewer of them might be a good thing.
I was going to say, from a maintenance standpoint, that's really not a problem. Honestly, replacing one touch screen as opposed to replacing dozens and dozens and dozens of little switches here and there that are all clipped in and wired in separately. I'm not necessarily against that.
Well, that has
however, a switch fails, and it's usually only like one switch or two, and it doesn't render your entire vehicle non-functional. But if you've got a touchscreen that runs everything, you're basically back to a really fancy-looking series truck in terms of functionality if that touchscreen fails.
Yeah, and then there's the other side effect of this, that is that there's no tactility to those buttons, and I am personally very much a proponent of keeping your eyes on the road while driving, and it doesn't usually take that long to figure out which button is where and what it feels like to operate it without looking at the button. That's not the case for touchscreens. Yeah, with a touchscreen, you got to look at it to be able to hit the button, and that's yet another negative against it.
Look at the reveal video, because they talked about the electronics and that touchscreens you talked about. I should have I meant to write down the number, and I didn't. They tell how much wire is in that thing. I don't know. Is it like a couple? It seems like a couple miles. Maybe it's not, but it felt like a couple miles. They showed the tech, and he has all the guts ripped out, and it's just on a workboard there, and you can just see wire upon wire upon wire, and then all these plugs for everything. And because the rear seats you have, at least on I know on the Disco Sport, the regular full Disco, the rear seats are all heated, and so you can imagine, and of course they're all automatic control now, so they go up and back and down. So while yes, you may have a smoother interface, you've got more to control.
That is very true as well.
On the other hand, the touchscreen will actually function to decrease that amount of wire, because most of that stuff's multiplexed with communication networks.
Also, okay, that's a good point.
So your seat's going to have a module. Every seat's going to have its own module. Right now, like every door has a module now already, and so there's a good bit of wire locally that runs all the motors and stuff, but it all runs into that box, and then from that box to the rest of the vehicle, it's just a data bus and a power wire.
All right, then. Well, maybe there's some progress. Still a lot of wire.
Well, yeah.
Top Gear out of the UK did an article on the difference between the Range Rover Velar and the Jaguar F-Pace, because they are the same architecture, same engines, but they say they are two different cars, but it's really, I think, difficult to tell the difference, because the Velar is based off of the frame of the F-Pace. It uses basically the same engines and pretty much the same suspension. My favorite part of this article was when they talked to JLR UK boss Jeremy Hicks, who says, Ian and Jerry would hate me for saying this, but you sit in a Jaguar and you sit on a Range Rover.
And I would add that you stand on a Defender.
Kind of wobble.
Well, I've yet to meet someone who has a Defender, hasn't stood upon part of it at some point, is what I'm saying. But nobody with a Jag would ever do that.
No, not at all. What I found interesting was that Velar came out pretty quickly, it seemed, from when we heard about it, and now you know why, because it's based off of the F-Pace body. So it's no wonder it kind of came up quickly. Plus, it helps with production costs because now they're producing, one chassis for 2 different vehicles, so you have a little reduction in costs because you can produce more of them and get bang for your buck. Plus, you
can amortize your development costs across 2 models.
Models, right? And it goes back to the point too that they also made about having more product, and there's a variation in it, but it looks brand new to everybody, but really underneath it may not be as new because they're sharing things. Anyway, that's the new Range Rover Velar. If you are a listener and you end up purchasing one or wish to allow us to take it out for a test drive, we are certainly available at any time to do that. If that sounded like some sarcasm, it's not. We really are available to drive your Velar. Right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, see?
Absolutely.
I thought.
Anything at all you need tested, let me know.
Moving on to the new Discovery, and just a couple articles that came out in the past month that were fun and interesting. The first one is that the Land Rover, was it the special vehicles people? They put a drone in the top of a Disco for the Austrian Red Cross. I'm sure everybody's seen the video by now, but it was just cool. They put this little unit up on top of the roof, and it slides back and deploys a drone.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's for, when they're off in hostile areas, they can sort of scan ahead without actually sending somebody up ahead to
Right.
scout for them.
Right.
They did some other very cool things as well. They removed some of the rear side windows and put storage bins in there. And they had a pretty nicely organized rear access to, med kits and all of that. So it was a very nice build.
It is called Project Hero, and yes, it was custom made by SVO, and it's a 3-liter TD6.
Sounds similar to what UPS is playing with drones for dropping the packages off.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did see something.
Comes out of the roof hatch with your package and takes it to your porch.
Yeah, I did see something about that. That's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yep.
Of course, Monster Garage did it first 10 years ago. They used a catapult, I do believe, but.
And then Ars Technica did a story on the Disco here for the U.S. They call it more versatile than a Swiss Army knife. I liked the article because it made clarity for me on what engines are available here in the U.S. And as I am trying to delay while I scan ahead to find where that is, 4 different engines make a smorgasbord of powertrain variations: 2 4-cylinder diesels and a new twin-turbo 240 horsepower version. Of course, those are not available. Those diesels are not available in North America, but we do have access to an upmarket 254 horsepower turbo diesel V6 and a 340 horsepower supercharged V6 gasoline engine, and those are both available here in the U.S. So that was, I think, the good part about seeing that article.
So we do get one diesel, and it's the biggest one they offer.
Hells yeah.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I'm all for bigger is better, but I mean, it'd be nice to have some options.
No, I agree. I know.
But at least we have the choice of a diesel, which we didn't used to get.
Right.
Right.
So, fuel economy for the V6 diesel in the U.S. should be 21, 26, 23, so that's city, highway combined. And then 16, 21, 18 for the supercharged V6 gasoline, which is slightly better than the V8 they had in the Disco 2s, right?
A good bit better.
Yeah.
What was that, 12
At
and
least
14?
in personal experience.
Yeah.
In actual operation. Well, 12 and 14, 13 maybe combined. This is 18.
If you're lucky. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever breaking 12.
I was able to get 16 for a while there, but that was on, summer tires.
Downhill too, right?
It was fairly mixed, but yeah, it took some gentle massaging of that gas pedal.
Right.
I'm sure all highway driving too. You're not no starting and stopping there.
Yeah, that was, well, I guess technically those are state highways, not interstate highways. Gotcha. But yeah, keeping it at usual 50 mile an hour speeds.
And also in Disco news, in design, the Jalopnik had a really cool article, at least I thought was cool, on the Disco's air intake and how that takes place. So go check the article. Chris, I'll have a link in the show notes. But they have some good pictures and a video there. So air comes in the bonnet, in the hood, and there are slots in the upper part of the hood, so the actual bonnet, the actual hood that closes, and air kind of circulates through there, then gets dumped into something called the rabbit hole, which is on the side of the truck and towards the back of the engine, and swirls around, and then finally gets to the air cleaner, and it's on both sides of the vehicle. The intent of this is to keep water out of the engine, and it does it even before it gets to the air filter by having all these twists and turns that would make the water not make it through. As the air turns, then the water would get stuck to the side of the side of the tube there, or whatever that tunnel is, and then
kind of like a Dyson vac.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it's pretty cool. So it makes and this is the reason why I think this is the the factory production vehicle with the greatest waiting depth of any disco, or I think, is that right? Am I getting that right?
Definitely of any disco. It might have been more than just Land Rover.
Yeah, I can't imagine when the Hummer, the commercial version of the Hummer, the H1. I suspect that this probably wasn't as good, but maybe with normal vehicles.
Well, it depends on how you define good, but
yeah, that too. Yeah,
but yeah,
I think short of installing a snorkel, you're not going to be able to wade any deeper.
Right.
It's pretty slick though. For if you don't want to add a snorkel, if you just take it right off the lot, it's pretty cool. It's cool tech, and it's not it's not complicated either.
It's not high maintenance, definitely.
Yeah. Yep.
I really like that kind of ingenuity.
Absolutely.
My only concern, since I've not looked under the hood, is what does that do to space? Do those chambers make it hard to get to things under the hood?
I don't necessarily think so, because it looks like it's all in the bonnet itself and on the sides and in the fender wells, and also like behind the firewall bulkhead area. So it seems to be on the around the engine, from what I can tell. So.
The problem is the fender wells in the bulkhead area, there's already a lot of issues with getting to stuff in those areas. So yeah. I'm curious what it'll do.
It'll mean now you may have to replace your hood as a general repair.
Oh, God.
Oh, good call. Good call. Yeah. Oh, it probably also means that the hood cost will increase. So if you have a front-end collision, then the hood probably is twice as much as it was before.
Yeah, you can't just bang it back out.
I know somebody that will. His name's Dave.
No, I'd give it a shot if it meant the difference between driving it again or having to total it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and they also talk about that. The way the design is, you can still drive it. Even if that doesn't work, there's still air getting to it, because that rabbit hole that's on the side in the fenders, air still gets into those independent of the ones that come in from the front. So it's kind of cool. And then finally, in disco news, I think is this final? Yeah, it's the final disco news item. The Euro NCAP results, which is a safety trial, gave the disco 5 stars. There were some issues with some of the airbags on the side not deploying in exactly the correct way. The driver airbag bottomed out in the frontal offset test because of insufficient pressure, but generally speaking, it's a very good rating for crash worthiness based on that European standard.
Interesting to see how it would fare in our tests.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen.
I'm not sure that their test is analogous to our IIHS, even though they're similar agencies.
I'm not sure. Well, we'll find out. I'll keep a lookout for it if and when that happens.
Still like to see good crash ratings for Land Rovers, though.
Well, yeah, a good rating is a good rating, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. At least here in the U.S., it helps with insurance, keeping that down.
Well, not just insurance, but peace of mind. I mean, you put your family in these things. You want them to be built like tanks. Mm-hmm. You want them to be able to be hit by trains and have your kids still walk away.
Mm-hmm. Or yourself.
Yes.
Well, certainly, but as a parent, I think somehow your kids
sure.
take a higher priority than you do.
Indeed, I was not diminishing children. I was just talking about the driver too. Come on.
Please address your comments to John Costin.
That's right, exactly. In Latrobe, PA. Yeah. All right, that is the basic news. We have one final piece, but this is self-promotion, I suppose. There is, here in the U.S., we have the Just British online motoring magazine. Michael Carnell, I think he's down in Florida, puts out a weekly newsletter, and I've been following it for a while. I think he's also one of our Patreon followers, so thanks, Michael, for that. But he called us, the podcast, one of North America's 2 Land Rover resources. So I want to thank Michael for that, us and Alloy and Grit magazine. So I'll let you go out and read read his write-up on us, which is very flattering, and it's very nice. And I think he hit the nail on the head for at least how others probably see the show.
And our price just went up.
That's right. I like it. So hey, thanks for that. And go on, and I'll have a link to the show notes for it. Subscribe if you like to his magazine. Every week he brings you information, not just about Land Rovers, but all makes of British vehicles, old and new. That's how I had learned about the Bentayga. Am I saying that right? And what it was up to. And you also hear about some of the things going on with MGs and Triumphs and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. He has his Twitter handle is Just British, @JustBritish. If you're listening and can't get right to the show, just get to the show notes just yet. So there you go. Thanks again, Michael, and the Just British online magazine. So that's the news for this month and some self-promotion. Thanks again to Mike Carnell and the Just British online motoring magazine for allowing us to do that. Now, coming up in just a few minutes, we are going to talk to Mike Ragsdale. He's the owner of the 30A company, which puts on the 30A Sand Rover Rally. I will let him explain where 30A comes from. It's actually... Well, okay, I'll tell you. It's the name of a road down there, like Route 66. They have a road called 30A, so that's where that comes from. So again, we'll be back in a few moments, and we'll have that interview. You notice we haven't had a heritage update or an M word the last couple months, and we don't have one this month. That's because folks are busy, life happening at them, and we do this as a volunteer effort, and hopefully those guys will have that for us soon here in a couple months, right, guys? No pressure, right?
Yeah, I expect to have Heritage back hopefully next month, if not the following month.
Excellent. And Harold will probably have the M word back when my truck is ready, is my assumption, right?
Perhaps.
Welcome back to the Centresteer podcast. This is show number 48 for March 2017. And now, joining us from Florida is Mike Ragsdale. He is the owner of 30A Company, which puts on the 30A Sand Rover Rally. Mike, I know no one can, we're not live. We record this, and you fired up your Skype, and I had to, you're making us jealous already because you are in front of your Land Rover on the beach with water behind you. We hate you already.
It's not a bad place to be, guys. It really is.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it, Mike.
Happy to be here.
We heard about you from Rovers Magazine. Jeff Aronson did a story on the Sand Rover Rally, and wanted to get you on the show to talk about it because the new one for this year is coming up in a couple weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, it's on Saturday, April 8th here in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. And actually, Jeff will be down here again for his 3rd year in a row. Fell in love with the area when he came the first time, and he's made it a habit to come back every year since then.
So tell us more about the Sand Rover Rally, how to come about. And
it's funny, it actually all goes back to Jeff in all sincerity. And this is probably telling too much. But that said, Jeff he was looking for story ideas, and he had seen something about my Rover, which is the one behind me. And he was kind of wanting to do a story, but he said, it's really great if there's an event, because then that gives us something to encourage people to talk about. And so I had no intention of starting an event, but I kind of thought, well, how hard would it be to get some guys together and throw something together? So literally what was intended to be a one-time event, really to kind of get a little press for our area, ended up creating what's now going into its 4th year, because I went out and got some people to show up, and I didn't know if anyone would show up. And we had about, I think, 60 vehicles showed up in year one, and then 80 year two, and then it's been over 100 ever since. And really, a lot of the writers from Rovers magazine have said they've seen more true Defenders and old 90s and Series 2 and Series 3s than they see in a lot of places. So it really has kind of snowballed, but it really was quite accidental.
Nice. It sounds like a just a really cool event. I mean, you're on I guess that's the Gulf Coast of Florida, right?
That's right. We're in the Panhandle, so it's really, if you've never been here, it's sugar white sand beaches, Caribbean turquoise water. The architecture is just unbelievable. I think a lot of people have a preconceived notion of what it is, and then when they get here, they're seeing these stunning homes that are really architecturally inspiring. You've got a lot of celebrities that secretly come here. It's not a paparazzi South Beach kind of destination. I tell people it's Mayberry meets the beach. It's much more small town America. There's very few high rises. In fact, you can't build over 4 stories tall here by law. About 40% of the land is protected, and that's actually a great thing for the Sand Rover Rally, because the 40% of land that is protected on this peninsula is 25,000 acres of just forest land, great sandy trails, but it all borders this beautiful, incredibly beautiful Gulf of Mexico, and behind me is Choctawhatchee Bay. So we're on a peninsula between the Gulf, which is about 3 miles to my south, and the bay, which is about 20 feet to my north, and in between is all of this forest that is ready for everyone to explore. So the 30A Sand Rover Rally is kind of twofold. There's the people who bring down the show vehicles, and they all meet at Gulf Place, which is a Gulf front community. And so last year, we had Alan Jackson, they brought a couple of his Defenders down, et cetera. So there's people who set up these, $120,000 vehicles, and they don't want to get them all scraped up, as opposed to the rest of us. We hit the trails early in the morning, explore. Everybody just kind of goes their own way, but it's kind of cool because there's maybe 80 vehicles cruising through the forest that day. And then everybody goes back to the Gulf Place community for just an afternoon of live music, food, beer. It's a lot of fun.
So it's more than just a rally. Then there's music and entertainment and
Absolutely. So Gulf Place is a little community that has an amphitheater with an outdoor stage, but around the amphitheater are restaurants, bars, shops. It's a great family-friendly event because the beach is right across the street. So, really it's a little bit of everything, because you have the guys who skip the show car side of it. They go out and get all muddy, and then they like to cruise in, I think, just to have the effect of all of a sudden there's a platoon of 20 vehicles cruising in that you can't even see the windshields from all the mud. And it's in pretty sharp contrast to all the show vehicles that people have put on flatbed trucks and driven here, just for the express case of showing off some of the custom jobs they've done. So it's pretty neat to see that dichotomy.
I believe that's called an invasionary force.
Exactly. The British are coming.
Is it mainly a camping event, or is there any camping at all?
There is some camping, and it really depends on just the personal choice. There's some amazing hotels and accommodations here. It's not your typical beach destination. So if you think of Cancun or Daytona or Panama City Beach, where you've got high-rise towers, it's a little harder to find accommodations here because it's mostly homes. I mean, there are a couple of boutique hotels, but there aren't high-rise developments. So there is a lot of camping that goes on. You can get primitive sites in the state forest. There's a handful of them for as little as $10 a night. And then there are 5 state parks within just a few miles of this area, and you can camp for, $25 a night. Some of them right on the water. That said, you kind of have to book in advance. So it is a very difficult thing if you're coming at the last minute.
Sure. How many vehicles again do you get, or how many people?
We had about 110 last year, and the only reason we know that we don't register, there's no fee to participate or anything like that. But we did some drone footage of the initial gathering, and we kind of sat there and counted all the vehicles. So we counted about 110, but that didn't include the people that were off, carousing through the woods at the time. But that was, for the most part, we think that's a pretty good count of how many we had last year.
So it's not exclusively a Land Rover event, right? I mean, you have other makes.
Decided, I would say it's predominantly Land Rover. In fact, Land Rover Gulf Coast out of Mobile, the dealership in Mobile is our main signature sponsor. We've also got Coastal Customs, which is just across the bay here, and Adventure Car Motorsports, which is in Birmingham. Those are two big custom job guys. So they really sponsor the event and make it possible. And but that said, we kind of call it Sand Rover. And what I mean by that is this is an area that's extremely affluent. Houses sell for the, $5-10 million on the Gulf front. It really could be a very pretentious area like South Beach or St. Bart if we weren't careful. So part of our thinking was, let's make it cool to drive an old beach beater rather than, Porsche or a Lamborghini or Ferrari. We want to see cool old cars. And so you actually end up with a lot of guys who, that's the great thing about this area. You can go into some of the beach bars here and, the guy who's sitting next to you might be a mullet fisherman, third generation. He might be a decamillionaire that landed his helicopter out on the beach. You just don't know because that's how everybody is here. It's very laid back. If you're wearing socks or shoes, you're way overdressed in any restaurant here. It's very laid back. It's very coastal. It's very southern still, right? We're basically the joke is we're in L.A., lower Alabama, because the Panhandle is just below Alabama. So there is very much a southern hospitality and a southern sensibility that you get here that I think visitors find welcoming. And there's a lot of it's not a lot of blue blood money. It's a lot of people who grew up with very little, have done well in their personal or professional lives, and now they're just here. So rather than kind of reward the behavior of fancy vehicles, I think the idea was to kind of make it cool to drive old beach vehicles, and that includes Land Rovers, but it can also we had old Army Jeeps last year from the Korean War. We had just cars, Broncos that people would chainsaw the top off of. And so it's just a lot of fun to see the eclectic mix of vehicles.
Nice. Yeah, we're mainly Land Rover podcast, but we certainly like almost any old vehicle. I mean, that's Broncos or anything. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned not being open to Porsches and Lamborghinis. You are aware, of course, that both of those companies have made SUVs at some point.
Yes, I am. It's all intermingled, and we don't shun them, of course. But at the end of the day, it's more about a celebration of vehicles that you would actually drive through the woods and have limbs scraping down the side, or that you would actually drive out on the beach, because we are in a neat little area where there's a lottery every year. You can get a beach permit to actually drive onto the sand in a very small area, but it's what locals do. And locals pull their vehicles, so I can drive Truman, my truck, right out to the beach. I can lower the tailgate, pop the cooler on the ground, throw up the beach chairs. Might be there a half hour, might be there for 9 hours, but it's not as involved as lugging all of your stuff out there. So that's another part of the inspiration for the Sand Rover part of it, is driving on the beach here is one of the very unique things that you don't get to do in a lot of places.
You're an excellent salesman. You're selling this event. Fantastic.
Gift of gab, as my parents said.
Well,
what's your day job, dude?
I moved here. My wife and I have 4 kids, and we moved here about 11 years ago. We had vacationed here before. Never thought about moving here. That said, we were just ready for a change. We were living in Birmingham, Alabama. It was a great city, but I was in a transitional period between jobs. And we just kind of thought, let's go do something. Let's go live where we want to live rather than just ending up somewhere. And so we decided to pick where we live first and then figure it out, as opposed to throwing out resumes or starting something and then going where the money takes us. Let's move where we want to live and then figure it out. So I started a company called 30A, which is at 30A.com. 30A is a road that runs along the Gulf Coast and ties together a bunch of these quaint little small beach villages. And we created a lifestyle brand. So today that brand has over 560,000 fans on Facebook. We've got stores that sell 30A apparel. We've got annual events like the Sand Rover Rally, which is one of our annual events. We've raised over $900,000 for local charities through a lot of our events. This is not a charity event, but we do charity events throughout the year. We've got a beach radio station at 30aradio.com. We've got a 30A wine at 30awine.com. We've got 30A craft here. We've got 30A. So we're really building what I kind of think of as the life is good for the Gulf Coast. And we're building a brand that keeps people in touch with the feeling they get while they're here, even when they can't be. It's a pretty good gig. I'm not going to lie about that.
Hey, you sound like a tourism promoter, so I guess you're in a good job.
Well, actually, it's changed for our company. We began to realize a few years ago that part of what keeps this area special is the small town feel of it. And so we kind of made a conscious decision to not promote tourism as much, and what I mean is there are tourism councils here. There are individual resorts that all promote tourism. There are real estate companies that promote it. There are vacation rental companies that promote it. And there are other media companies that promote it. So instead, we really decided to be a lifestyle. And what I mean by that is I look at Patagonia as a great example, or Colombia. You don't have to go to Argentina to wear a Patagonia jacket, right? You don't have to go to Washington State to the Columbia River, which is where Columbia Apparel was founded, to wear Columbia apparel. It's not a tourism thing. So we're really much more focused on capturing the laid-back small-town beach vibe that's here and sharing that. And whether you visit or not, it's kind of secondary. We really want people to enjoy the product because they understand the philosophy of what we're doing. So, for example, this shirt right here is part of our new recycled line of T-shirts. So we have a line called Dumpster Diver, believe it or not. So this shirt is made from 8 recycled plastic bottles. So all of our new apparel is made from recycled plastic bottles that are salvaged from landfills in the Southeast. And every shirt's made from recycled plastic. And that's something we feel passionate about because it helps keep plastic out of the landfills and the ocean.
Cool.
Very cool. On the thread of sort of tourism and all of that, how far do people tend to come to go to the Sand Rally?
Well, we've definitely got Jeff coming in from Maine. So he wins an award for coming in. But I would
Come
say
on, he needs to get out of the winter that is Vinyl Haven Island. Come on.
April is mud season for him.
Hey, why do you think he suggested this event in the first place? He wanted to get out of Maine.
Tax write-off. That's right. We have this area is a small population. There's only about 12,000 people that live here full time, but it is a big destination for what we call the feeder markets of Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham, Jackson, Louisiana, New Orleans, Houston, and Dallas have really become huge feeder markets for us as well. So we've definitely had people bring their vehicles down from Nashville and Atlanta all the way up from, say, places like Orlando and Miami as well. And we're starting to see more and more people come over from Louisiana and Texas. So I think we're seeing every year, it get a little broader, but I would say you're typically looking at the Southeast just because it's very easy for them to drive their vehicles here.
Sure. Yeah, I have colleagues in Little Rock, Arkansas. I told them about you already, and they're like, "Really? They didn't even know it was down there." And yeah,
we have a lot of people here from Little Rock. In fact, one of our business partners is from Little Rock, and one of the most famous restaurants here is called the Red Bar, and it's been featured in countless music videos and all that stuff. But the founders of that were restaurateurs in Little Rock and moved here about 25 years ago. And have been here ever since. So there's definitely a lot of Arkansans here.
So outside of the Land Rover Sand Rover Rally, let me get that correct. Can folks just come down on their own and drive through? Is it a state forest or state park?
Absolutely. So you've got about 4 state parks that a lot of them feature campgrounds. But the state forest is really the best for exploring. It's 25,000 acres, a lot of sandy roads. Some of them are broader and easier to access if you're really wanting to get in there and, don't mind getting a few bumps and bruises along the way. Then there are definitely a lot of side trails that you can explore. One of the real big secrets, though, that most people haven't tapped into is directly across the bay here is Eglin Air Force Base. Eglin Air Force Base is one of the largest, geographically, one of the largest military bases in the world. And there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres that you can access. You pay an annual fee, which is negligible. It's like $25 or something. You have to take a class on what to do when you find if you find unexploded ordnance and that sort of stuff. But there are certain parts of the forest
Speaking of unexploded ordnance.
Yeah, exactly. There are certain parts of the forest where they said you'll be driving around and you'll see like an F-15 up in the trees that they've just put there for training exercises to teach pilots how to bail out or whatever. There's all sorts of bunkers and burned out vehicles. So you've got just literally an endless forest to explore, but it also happens to be littered with a lot of military vehicles that make it kind of fun as well.
Did we cover costs of this thing?
Doesn't cost a thing. We don't make any money off of it, and we don't charge anything for it. The way we help fund the live music and some of the security stuff that we need is through sponsors. So we get a couple sponsors to help underwrite it, and so it's just a free to participate event.
Do you give away promotional items?
We often have prizes and stuff, and obviously the vendors who show up give away a lot of stuff. So we've had companies come and give away T-shirts, they give away koozies, they give away keychains, but Land Rover Gulf Coast out of Mobile, the dealership, they always bring swag. So it's just a fun event. We really don't have any agenda other than just to celebrate kind of what we consider some of the coolest vehicles on the planet.
Seems to me you could promote the 30A brand amongst the Land Rover community pretty well by handing out 30A fuses.
Nice tie-in. Nice, Harold. Well done.
Well played.
I go through a lot of those.
Funny you should say that because we had an engineer or I guess he was an electrical engineer in Atlanta, Georgia. We do give out 30A stickers, and people put them on their cars, and it's kind of a tribal thing. So they really exploded and shown up all over the United States and all over the world. And at one time, an electrical engineer sent us an email and said, I have to tell you, I was driving around Atlanta for a few years, and every time I saw one of those on, I'm like, who are all these electrical engineers? Who's using all these 38 fuses? And he said it took him a while to figure out that it had nothing to do with electronics, that it was actually a destination and a beach brand. So.
Very cool.
So let's talk about Mike Ragsdale, the man. It's behind you in this photo, which we're all jealous. It looks to be a Series 3. And it looks like a military fuel filler area with a canvas top and a snorkel.
Yep, that's Truman, and he's actually in 1986-90. He was a Ministry of Defense out of Great Britain, and a friend of mine found him on a military lot over there, kind of aging away. We brought him overseas. He actually has a 200 TDI turbo diesel engine, really great shape for his age, and just turned 30 last year. And, hopefully he's got plenty of years left on him. The engine, we rebuilt the engine, and we've driven him all over. My wife and I drove him down to Key West and back last year, which is, when you're in Florida, a lot of people don't really realize how big Florida is. It's getting to Key West still a 14-hour, well, longer than a 14-hour drive, 14 hours in a regular vehicle. We took a week to get down there, just taking our time and sticking to the beach. We don't go on the interstate too much. But that said, it was an 1,800-mile trip, and he did great. And I take him down to Orlando for the Surf Expo a couple times a year, and he actually is part of our booth. So I'll drive him to Orlando and then roll him in. We'll drive him into the convention center and put him right in our booth. And it did not start out to be our mascot, but ultimately Truman ended up becoming kind of one of our cultural company icons.
With a surfboard,
awesome.
With a surfboard on top, which is kick-ass.
With a stand-up paddle board. We call them YOLO boards because the YOLO company was started here, and they kind of popularized stand-up paddle boarding, not just here, but really helped bring the sport to the mainstream across the nation. So they're our partners, and there's nothing better than kind of throwing the boards up there and backing up onto the beach, and especially when you got a calm day where the water's like glass, it's just perfect to get out there. Get out there with the dolphins. It's just incredible.
I'm more of a beer guy, so I know less about the surfboarding and the, what would you call it, stand-up board?
Stand-up paddleboarding. So this is, I promise you, it requires zero athleticism. You can.
Well, there you go, John.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
You can bring your beer. I mean, look, I go out there and, we bring a little cooler set on. I mean, it's like a large paddleboard. You stand on it, you can sit on it, and it's not surfing at all. I mean, in fact, my favorite time to go is when it's flat as a lake, you know, and you can see the manatee or the dolphin swimming with you. And in fact, even though, you know, this is a large body of water behind me, the reality is you could walk half a mile straight out and not be above your waist. It's only about 3 or 4 feet deep until you get out toward the middle. So you can actually just, even if you fall off, there's very little harm.
So that means you could also drive halfway out then.
I have not done that in this water, but theoretically you could, yes.
I was thinking that too.
Every time I go in the water, I'm always looking for, okay, I've got a winch on the front. What am I going to use that winch to pull me out if I get stuck? And once you get out more than a few feet, you know, there's not too many docks around. So that's definitely a level of commitment I have not yet made. Well,
if you drive it in reverse, just keep your hook on shore.
I like it. Now I sound more like bait than any point. Not sure what we're going to catch doing that.
So were you always a Land Rover guy, or is this your very first Land Rover?
This is my first, and no, I was not even a car guy. I mean, meaning I like cars as much as anybody, but I was not an enthusiast. I'm certainly not a mechanic or mechanically inclined. My wife and I had always fantasized about dropping out and taking the family on an around the world trip. We could never afford to do that with all of our kids because we have 4 kids. So I hate to say it, and my older 2 kids kind of got the shaft, but as soon as they moved off and went to college, we waited a respectful amount of time. And then I started thinking, okay, we could actually do this, because we kind of realized if you live like locals rather than tourists, you can actually, this is a pretty expensive area to live where we are. So we could actually, I won't say save money, but it wouldn't cost an extraordinary amount of money to travel the way we were envisioning. So we really had no idea how we would pull it off. We bought around the world tickets for about $2,500 a piece, and we took the kids out of school and went around the world for almost a year. And we avoided Europe and expensive places, and we went to more cost-effective places and rented apartments and used Airbnb and VRBO. So before we left on that trip, I sold my vehicle because I knew I wasn't going to need it. And when I was, we were in Eastern Europe, like Poland and places like that. And our next stop was going to be Turkey. And a friend of mine who I'd gone to school with in college, he had gone on to be a JAG with the Air Force. So he was stationed in Turkey with his wife and kids. And we had, known, I was actually in his wedding. We had known each other, but had not seen each other in 20 years. So he said, look, man, New Year's Eve's coming up. Why don't you meet us in this little village? It's in Turkey. It's unbelievable. You're going to be blown away. We're going there. Why don't you meet us? So we said, okay. So we went to meet him in this village in central Turkey. And when we're there catching up and hadn't seen him and his wife in 20 years, he starts showing me photos of all these Land Rovers that he had customized and fixed up. So he would go in and find them in old military lots, and then he would have fun restoring them. And so I really got infected, I think, at that moment. I kind of saw these photos of these incredible Series 2. He had got an old Santana from Spain. I mean, he had really come up with some pretty cool ones. When we got back from our trip, I didn't have a vehicle because I had sold my car before I left. So I started thinking very impractically and ended up buying this. And it's my only vehicle. My wife's got a car, but this is my full-time drive, my daily drive.
Well, what's impractical about that?
Yeah, nothing except when I'm,
if you're going to have only one, it's got to be a good one.
Well, this is my only one, and it is my full-time, everyday drive. And it's funny when I take him to the trade show, like for the Surf Expo, people are like, is there actually an engine in that, or does that ride, or what do you do? Put it on a flatbed? And I'm like, well, I hope there's an engine in there because I got to get home. So I think people are kind of intrigued to find out that is, that's it. That's my vehicle of choice.
On the podcast, you're among friends. We fully support and endorse your decision.
Absolutely.
We would do it.
So I would say I've become an enthusiast. I really do have an appreciation in a way that I never did before. I respect people who fix them up and really gut them and make them pristine and brand new, but my style is much more, I've tried to keep it as minimalist as possible. I've kept a lot of the old artifacts inside the vehicle, the old military signs that are poorly translated from some language, God knows what. And, really have just, it's fun. Everybody does it a different way, but I've just tried to keep it to some degree as pure as possible. It was actually camo colored, and I let...
Of course it was.
Yeah, I let our Facebook audience help pick some of the accessories and the color. And so this was a British, this is stone, light stone, which was also an official British military color. So this felt a little more beachy to me than the traditional camo color. But so that's kind of how we got here.
Do you know anything about
that? Kind of is camo for where you are now.
That's right. Now I blend in very well.
Do you know anything about the history of its military service?
Not really. It was August of 1986. I know that it was, that's the day it was put into service.
Okay.
I've not really done a whole lot of background checking on the records, but I do believe it was probably off of the mainland in Great Britain, because some of the signs they're in English, but they read as if they were poorly translated. So I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know what it means. It was in, Germany or Crete or whatever, but
right.
But I suspect it was somewhere other than the British mainland.
Well, if you know the British registration number, you can research that for free now. You used to have to pay for it. Now it's free.
Well, I will absolutely do that, because I keep the original key fob that has the serial number. It was an old brass fob that I'm sure if you were on the base and somebody said, well, here's the number, go get that one. I've kept all that original signage in the vehicle. So now that I know that, I will definitely research it.
Yeah,
right.
Cool.
It's 2 digits followed by 2 alphas followed by 2 digits. That's your military reg number.
And so you can go online, I assume, to a British Ministry of Defense URL, or is it more of a commercial thing?
Actually, it's a .com. It's called whatdotheyknow.com, I think is what it's called. I can look that up and I'll get it for you. It's the British equivalent of our Freedom of Information Act, and they act as a clearinghouse for all of the government searches or queries that you might have, and they can get that information for you. And they've got a little form on their website you fill out.
I would love that. I've always been curious to know where he went before I got him.
I'll look that up and I will get that for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
There's also the ex-military Land Rover Association out of the UK. Because I also have an ex-military Land Rover. It's 1980 Series 3. Through them, because it's 67 HG83, it's its registration number. And so I was able to get the history. They did before what Harold was talking about. Before that, they would help you out. The XMLRA would help you out. But if that, I'll pass XLRMRA information on to you if you're interested.
I would love that.
Yeah, they
really
it's they have a Facebook page and they've got a website. You can kind of just learn.
It's a neat club and they have a magazine, the whole deal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
They'd actually love to hear about yours and what it's doing now. That's
great.
That's killer stuff. In fact, today I just got my renewal notice. It's like 22 pounds a year. So for
that's nothing. Well, that's great. Well, yeah, no, he's enjoying his retirement in Florida for sure. He's
I love it. That's great.
Spent a lot of time on the beach and pretty laid back here.
As a lot of Brits do themselves, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I will add one comment, though, earlier when you were talking about your truck, and you were saying you hope it lasts for many more years. That truck was designed to last forever. How long it lasts depends only on the availability of parts.
This is true, and it's one of the things we do live in a salt air climate here, so it's definitely a very abusive to normal vehicles. But that's the brilliant thing about the design of these, of course, is the aluminum frame. That said,
not wait. No, actually, the frame is not aluminum. The frame is steel.
Sorry.
Yeah. Did you? Is it galvanized yet? Have you gotten a galvanized frame?
That's a great question, but no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Those are easy to get.
I've worked with a group right here called Coastal Customs, and you go up there and it's just amazing how many Defenders and how many Series 2s and Series 3s they've got. And it's, 10 miles north of here. They actually hired a guy who out of King of Prussia up north, who his name is Michael, and he had this European import parts business. So now really there are very few companies and people on the planet who know Defenders and know 90s and Series 2s as well as these guys, because they've been doing it for several decades. And It is an incredible, nice resource to have just a few miles away. When there is something that goes wrong, they're very proactive and can get the parts very quickly.
That's good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's evolved into something pretty special up there.
Yeah, but at some point, if you're having, especially when you have the salt air, you're going to probably have to consider a galvanized chassis at some point.
Is that
and a bulkhead?
Yep. Well,
the chassis and the bulkhead are the only two parts on the truck that are steel. Everything else is aluminum.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not a motorhead and don't know a lot of the stuff I should know. Fortunately, I've got a lot of people around me who are, and they're definitely helping me be proactive with those types of things.
Right. You don't have to know everything as long as you know people who do.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not having problems with the chassis, don't touch it. But when you get there, that's just something.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
They just worked on it recently. I had them change out some of the stereo speakers and stuff like that. We ended up putting kind of these wakeboard type speakers so that they could be more marine quality. That said, he said really everything's looking really good, and I have them check for rust. I have them check for all sorts of stuff. So I think we're in pretty good shape at the moment. But you're right, don't mess with it unless it's acting wonky.
Did you do anything else interesting to the vehicle? Any other customization that maybe folks would be interested about?
Yes and no. I put just facing bench seats in the back, and I put a 12,000-pound plasma rope winch on the front. I do have a snorkel, but I have to say I blew an engine because it's not. I kind of realized, even though it's technically hooked up, I was really doing the no shit adventurous crossing the rivers kind of stuff, and I ended up realizing, I don't have the military grade set up where you really, if you're going to be doing that kind of submersion, you really need something higher end than what I had. So even though I do have a snorkel, I have not yet made that purchase, but that is something I'll probably do because we don't have a lot of here in Florida. I mean, think about this: the highest point in the state of Florida is about 45 minutes that way, and it's like 236 feet high. That's the highest elevation in the state of Florida. So we don't have a lot of hills here.
No.
What we do have is a lot of sand, and what we do have I blanked for a second, but what we do have is, where was I going with that?
You were talking about hills and elevation and consistency of the ground.
Well, anyway, the winch, I guess where I can't remember exactly where I was going with it, but that said, the winch, has been come in handy numerous times because people get stuck on the beach all the time, and the first person they see me and the first person they come to is me. So I've kind of learned, rather than tearing up the transmission, to use the winch as much as possible. And other than that, I've really kept it. It is a right-hand drive, and I've just kind of tried to keep it as authentic and pure as possible without making too many modifications, other than the stereo system.
Hey, there's important things.
When you're on the beach, you got to have some music.
That's right. Got to have tunes.
Can you hear it over the engine?
Actually, you can. Pretty well. I didn't put in a radio player or a CD player or anything like that. It's a simple phone jack. You plug in your jack, it plays music, and because this is wakeboard tower type stuff that you would normally have on a boat. So it's designed not only to be weatherproof and rust-proof, but also to put out sound over a lot of noise.
Cool. Yeah.
So, but other than that, no, I put a bottle opener on the back bumper, and
me too. I have one on the front bumper.
Okay, all right.
Mine's integral to the bumper.
Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
More accurately described as a bottle top remover.
Thank you. That's an engineer speaking. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, because the first iteration of it actually physically removed the top of the bottle with the cap still attached to it.
I did not know that. Well,
it took me a little fine tuning to get it right on that particular model.
Here at the beach, they really, really, really frown on glass on the beach, so it's actually illegal. So for the most part, we're using cans and other things, but the bottle opener comes in handy when you are where I am today, which is on the bay or out in the woods somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, Harold redid the bumpers for my series truck and integrated a bottle opener, which, as he indicated, for about a year, I'd use it and it would take off the whole top, glass and all. It worked.
I guess I shouldn't have prototyped it using a champagne bottle, huh?
I guess not. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show, talking to us about the Sand Rover Rally and giving us information about Truman, which looks spectacular, and I'm currently still jealous of the view we have. I think you set up the picture on purpose, and I appreciate that. It is appreciated.
You're very welcome. And, you guys would welcome you down anytime. Come see it for yourself. It's really a beautiful part of the country that a lot of people haven't visited. That said, the URL that people can go to find out more information is 30asandroverrally.com. It's on April 8th at Gulf Place here in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. It's free, open to the public, very family friendly. There's a lot of music, a lot of trail rides, a lot of great vehicles, and a lot of fun. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. If I wasn't already pledged to go to SCAR this year, I think I might redirect myself down to the Sand Rover Rally.
Well, we'll send you guys some videos and photos, and you'll be able to see a little bit of what we do.
That'd be very cool. Very cool. Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks.
And that's the show for this month of March 2017, show number 48, the Centresteer podcast. I want to thank our two contributors this month, Harold, all the way via Skype today from just down the road in Latrobe. Thanks, Harold.
Sure.
And also thanks to the host, creator, and proprietor of SeriesParts.com, Morgan up in Vermont.
Well, thank you.
How is Series Parts coming now that you had to move? I suspect that impacted Series Parts.
There was a little bit of downtime while I migrated servers and stuff like that, but it has not given me additional development time, that's for sure.
But it is still...
didn't have to pack up all the parts and move them from one apartment to another?
Fortunately, those were in a storage unit.
But it's still up and running.
It's still up and running, yep. I still have a laundry list of improvements I need to make to the site, but it's still up and running.
And SeriesParts.com is a website that you can go to if you're looking for parts, a garage for your Series or Defender.
Correct.
I got it right. Woohoo! First call.
You did.
I don't have to edit the podcast on that one. Also, thanks to the One True Packs for his production support. I think the audio is getting better. I want to hear from folks if that confirm that. Do you think the audio has gotten better? Do you like where it is? Send me a tweet, send me an email. Let's confirm that with our listeners. I think we've gotten into a better routine, and Pax I think has done a great job in helping us to get better audio. So yeah, let me know. Let's get that confirmed. If not, then I need to work on it. Also, I'm going to be heading to the SCAR rally in Texas, outside of Dallas, April 19th through the 23rd. And I hope to do some podcast recording while I'm there on site, at least maybe do some interviewing for later shows. I will have some stickers with me, and so if you listen to the show and say hi and introduce yourself, I'll be happy to give you a sticker. So that is the podcast for this month. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for listening. Reminder to visit our website for past shows and show notes. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter for feedback, like how's the audio these days. And you can also directly support the show at patreon.com/Centresteer. We have links also for that on our webpage. If you want to be a sponsor of the podcast, send me an email, or I've gotten a couple of those I need to follow up on. And we'd love to hear from you, our listeners, what you're up to in your Land Rover. Until next time, I ask you to share the show with another Land Rover fan. Thanks for listening. Wave as we pass by.
We didn't have to do much.
That's my favorite guest, is the one that can do it himself.